Knocks. Written by evilartbunny. Narrated by Gamma Akutabi. It is the first house I had ever bought. Many of my friends consider it a great achievement for someone in their late 20s, but I suspect that it will be the last house I ever buy. There was something not right about this house. I should have trusted my gut when I saw the strange little space in the basement. It was not big enough to be considered a room, and it was the wrong height to be a closet of some kind. Perhaps it held some sort of heating unit in the past? The house was mostly new. I say mostly because it was built over the foundations of an older house. So that strange space was probably part of the older building. Despite it being empty, it felt oddly inhabited. Standing close to it made me feel how I imagine a small dog might feel picking up the territorial marking scent of a wolf. But the price was so good I ignored my instincts. The agent told me the new owner had suddenly received a new job opportunity across town and did not want to spend 3 hours driving to and fro from work every day. They were looking to sell fast, and if I could get past the minor fix-ups property required, this was a steal in an up-and-coming real estate with several schools and shopping malls planned to be built within a 15-minute drive. How could I pass this opportunity? I told myself when I got the finances together. I could just seal up the creepy basement space. Part of me knew I would never really get around to them. More likely, I would just let it sit there and never enter the basement. I have survived here for a year, 6 months, and 12 days now, and I do not know how much longer I can keep this up. I know I cannot just leave. One of them appear attached to me, and I am scared if I move, it will follow me. Then I will have to set up a new routine to keep at it at bay. Or failing that, well, I have no idea what it does when it catches up. And I have no intention of finding out. Yes, I admit, I have one of those personality types where I leave things be until I really need to deal with them. But I have made it this far in life, so leave me alone. It began, as many of these things do, with knocking in the walls. I thought it was just creaks of wood and the house settling in. What else could it be? That was until my friend came over to stay one night. I'm an introvert, so holding a house party was an unattractive prospect. But my extrovert adopter, Vivian, had been very excited for my first house purchase, and having disappointed her the lack of a house party, I made her the consolation prize of being the first guest to sleep over. I had only stayed in the house for 2 weeks then. A lot of things were still in boxes and I had not shopped for much furniture. But after a simple dinner, we made ourselves cozy with sleeping bags, nachos, soft drinks, and my brand new television. We were in the middle of a good old conversation when the knocking came. V sat up straight with her eyes scanning the ceiling as if looking for the source. I stared at her quizzically. Suddenly she asked loudly, "Anyone there?" We stayed silent. Just as I was about to say something, several knocks came sounding. She broke into a half grin. "What are you doing?" I asked her. "Didn't you notice?" she said, eyes still scanning the ceiling. "That rapping sound." "Yes, I've heard it ever since I moved in. just the house settling. It sounds like it's been trying to participate in our conversations, V said. I had not noticed the knocking while we had been talking the last 3 hours, but then the odd knocks had become somewhat background noise to me. It was about 11 at night, and the hair on my neck was standing. I do not do well with spooky things. The last horror movie I watched years before had kept me awake for 3 weeks, and I swore never again. Can we not test this? I squeak, but I could see V had that look in her eye, and I had never successfully dissuaded V from doing anything. 1 for yes, 2 for no. She persisted, calling out loudly to the ceiling, then leaned over to me completely ignorant of my wide-eyed discomfort and whisper, I watched this in a documentary once. A family communicated with a spirit in their house this way. What happened to the family? I asked, not sure if I wanted to know. A sharp rap from the ceiling was my reply. Nope, I announced, standing up. Nope, 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 and no. We are leaving this instant. I resolutely stood up, prepped to get into a pair of jeans, grab my keys, and go somewhere. Anywhere. Late hour be damn. V snorted and laughed at me. Don't be silly. Okay, we won't continue. You haven't had any bad experiences here for the last couple of weeks, right? No. I answered slowly, relieved she was going to stop whatever the heck was going on. And it was true. I hadn't actually gotten the creeps or any nightmares since moving in. Then it's just some creaking, right? Even if it is something, she said, and I winced at the thought. It's friendly. Okay, I relented. But any further knocking or seeking a response, and we're going to stay over at yours for the night. She smiled and placated me with a hand on my arm. We had one of those platonic relationships, always on the verge of turning into something more, but never doing so, as other love interests drew us away from each other. We spent the remainder of the night watching videos on the internet till we dozed off on the floor in our sleeping bags around 2 in the morning. There were no more knocks I heard that night. I woke up the next day from the sunlight pouring into the room. I rolled over wondering what time it was and realized V was not in her sleeping bag. I listened out for water running from the bathroom or the shower, but didn't hear any. No sounds from the kitchen either. Puzzled, I fumbled for my glasses and dragged myself to my feet. I found her outside still in her jammies, sitting on the porch step. She had her chin in her hands, staring at the grass by the pavement. She had her car keys, phone, and purse by her side. Hey, what's going on? She turned and gave me a smile, then asked if we could go grab brunch somewhere. I replied, sure. Went back in and did a quick change. Just before I got out, she poked her head in the door and asked me if I could grab the rest of her stuff. Although I felt a bit off about the abrupt end to the stay over, I did not question her. Grabbing her day clothes and toiletry bag, I headed out. She drove in her pajamas over to her place some 20 minutes away, then went in to change. I waited for her in the car. We had not said anything much to each other as we had driven. I knew when she was ready, she would tell me what was going on. We went to a nearby cafe, one of our regular haunts. As we settled down to our meal, she finally confessed. She had gone and communicated further with the knocking earlier in the morning while I slept. I gave a deep groan and put my head in my hands. I was annoyed, but I could rarely remain angry with Vivian. V, of all things, why? I lived there alone and I spook easy. I'm sorry, I had totally forgotten about it by morning, but right as I finished brushing my teeth and stepped out into the corridor, I heard the tapping. Okay, I said, taking a breath. Are you sure I want to hear this? And she hesitated. I kind of need you to hear this. I sat up, hearing the askance for help in my friend's voice. Go on then, I sighed. Look, in the documentary I watched, it was about 3 girls in the 1800s or something who claimed that their house was haunted by a spirit who left them predict the future. The spirits will communicate via knocks. 1 for yes, 2 for no. They turned the whole thing into a fortune-telling business. Some say they were eventually outed, while people discovering hidden devices under the kitchen table where they held sciences to create the rapping noises. Of course, others still believe it to be a true story. She shifted nervously. So I thought I asked if the knocking knew the future. As easily as I was spooked, I raised my eyebrow incredulously. You're joking, right? It didn't actually predict something. Well, not exactly. Not right away. She had her arms folded and was staring at the floor. I asked if it could tell me the future, and it answered yes. But I didn't ask about the future to test it at first. I started by asking how many boyfriends I had. It answered 6 by knocking that many times. You've had 5. Well, technically I have 6. I just never count the first one as a real boyfriend. Okay. Creepy, but not beyond coincidence. Well then, I asked for my street number. It rapped 3 times, 4 times, then 7 times. And I guess that is correct. Unit 3, number 47. So I was convinced. She felt quiet. Then what? Then V whispered. I asked when I would die. You what? She sighed. Look, I just thought it wouldn't be that serious a question. Which part of knowing when you're going to die is not serious? I cried in apoplexy. I closed my eyes and took a very deep breath. Okay, I get it. It was surreal. This sort of things doesn't happen. You got caught in the moment as if it were one of those internet sites where they tell you your death date. Another deep breath. Then what happened? She looked like she was about to cry. Well, it didn't answer at first, so I thought I was being clever. I asked how many decades I had left. There was no response. So I asked how many years. Still not response. Months? Nothing. Weeks? Nothing. And then I asked how many days I had left. I held my breath. 4, she said. Like I said, I spook easily, and obviously I have a soft spot for V, inclination for trying to communicate recklessly with the supernatural notwithstanding. So we made a plan. The few people I had told this to have laughed, but it's what's really happened. We asked ourselves, how could we avoid as many horror movie tropes as possible? First, I decided I was not going to stay at my house for the next few days. Instead, I will stay with V for the whole week. I work from home, so there was no big deal where I was staying, as long as I had my laptop. Secondly, we got into a bit of a debate of exactly what 4 days mean. Was that morning day 1 or was it day 0? We were counting in hours from the time V asked a question. Just to accommodate for all timing contingencies, we decided the days 3, 4, and 5 we will be strictly staying in V's unit. We will stock up on groceries and supplies and order food in if we had to. V was still at the university, so she will miss a lab class, but could get her lecture and assignments online. Thirdly, on day 4, the most likely day of the prediction, a Thursday, we will invite as many friends over as possible for dinner and board games. Really push the vibe as far away from spooky as possible. Also, we have the safety of company in numbers. We figure if she was going to die from something medical and sudden, then fine, nothing we could do to prevent it. But we will reduce the chances of anything supernatural as much as possible by doing this. We're probably drawing inspiration from too many horror movies, but it didn't feel too silly at the time. We went back to mine later that day. V wouldn't enter my house, but I steeled myself to grab whatever I needed as fast as I could. I did hear the creak a couple of times. Really gave me a good jolt when I heard a sudden snap overhead in the bathroom. But I kept telling myself I didn't have to respond to it. And if I didn't respond to it, then it would leave me to do my thing as I had been all this time. Also, this was ridiculous, and surely V's experience was some incredulous example of coincidence. We had quite an unremarkable week, all things considered. As the 4th day came and went, Vivian was still well and alive. I had kept her within view most of the day. We spent the evening in the midst of board games and good company, so we barely noticed when the clock passed midnight. Nothing even remotely dangerous or creepy had occurred. Then the 5th day passed without incident, and we allowed ourselves to giggle nervously at how we had behaved that week. She was even beginning to act tough, but I know she had believed things enough to call her mother, who she has serious issues with, during the week, just in case. By the 6th day, Saturday, I decided I should head back. I could not stay at her apartment forever, and we were both beginning to need our own spaces. But I'll admit it, I was still spooked. It was evening when I arrived home. I was about to prepare dinner when I heard a rap. Something in me roused, an emotion akin to anger. Assertiveness? I spent an entire week fearful and dedicated to the crazy notion that the knocking sound might have been a real supernatural thing. I was tired in a way, and aside from seriously considering selling the house I had just moved into because it creaked occasionally, I decided I was just going to have to get over myself and prove it was all rubbish. "Hello?" I said. My voice did not sound as brave as I wanted to be. There was no response. Was that you? There was a very loud creak that made me jump. Okay, I gasped, trying to gain control of my breathing. I could feel the blood drain out of my face. If you're real, can we make a deal? A knock. I don't ever want to see what you are. I never want to get any sense of your presence aside from the knocking. And in return, I don't do anything about you. Is that possible? Even today, I can hardly believe I was able to muster that. And yes, I realized that my proposal was not really a sensible trade of any kind. But I doubt many would have done better in such a situation. A knock. It agreed? Oh, okay, cool. Then I took a deep breath, not believing that I was actually communicating with this thing. And, last thing I ever want to ask you, why did you tell my friend she was going to die in 4 days? 4 sharp raps, followed by several long creaks. It felt like it was laughing. The prolonged sounds made me size up, and I fought the instinct to just get the hell out of my house and drive to my parents. You were joking? I stammer. A knock. Alright, but no more jokes, okay? This is really all I can handle. Silence. It remained silent for the rest of the evening. I do not believe I have been so scared and so brave in my life that weekend. I went about my life, shutting every open door to empty rooms, turning on every single light, and having lots of music on to change the mood. But I would play the music only on speakers, not earphones, because I wanted to hear if anything was coming. There were creaks now and then, but they could truly have been the house settling in. Or perhaps just my housemate minding its own business? I never told anybody, but I did give the presence a nickname. I call it Knox, and it will turn out to be the friendliest of the 5 entities that presented in my house. I have not even told you about my experience with the basement space yet. And that's today's story, Outlaw. This is one of the stories that I really enjoy listening to, and I heard it over and over on another more popular channel. I love their take, which is a fellow colleague of mine. I just took a gamble and I went like, hey, author of the story, may I please have your blessings to narrate this series? And luckily for me, they replied and told me yes. And I am excited and hyped about this. This story is amazing. The fact that it left you hanging, like, okay, this is happening. There's one entity already in here, but there's 5 entities total, and we're gonna know about the other one soon when I narrate the other story. Don't worry about that. It's gonna happen. It's gonna come to this channel, trust me. Not a weekly story like, hey, I did part of this story. I'm gonna try to have this story, then another story, and then I'm gonna work on the other part of the story for this one. And that's my plan for it. Okay, so if you enjoyed it, leave a like, a comment, and like always, I see y'all on the wasteland.